Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show. And it is Tuesday, and it is August the 19th. We are now 10 days out from an interesting little moment in my life where I'm going to get to sit down with some DOJ attorneys. And we're going to try to litigate, mediate, come to an agreement on the lawsuit that we have. This is 26 FBI employees are going to be looking down the barrel of what are we going to go forward and do here? Are we going to take this into federal court and see what a jury thinks? Or are we going to be able to shut it down beforehand? Interestingly enough, the allegations that are made by me and my co-plaintiffs in this lawsuit are the same allegations that Kash Patel, the FBI director, made about the same guy that we allege did it. COVID nonsense. COVID tyranny. Ain't that something? And since we're on the topic of FBI, just kind of briefly, I'm going to tell you today's program is going to culminate with a discussion about the big nugget. The Trump administration prides itself on being an administration of firsts. The first time that you've seen Fox News hosts jump into governmental roles, sometimes good, sometimes bad. We are having another first as of yesterday afternoon. So, stand by for fun. We will get into that, the big nugget. Also want to talk about a couple of wins I think that are decent. We're going to talk about Lee Zeldin, who's doing something quite interesting regarding diesel regulations, actually emissions and regulations in general. This is actually the thing that should be happening. And generally speaking, if it is happening and it's good, then you're not going to hear about it a lot on most of the news. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Zelensky/Euro boring leaders meeting with Donald Trump. And I want to kind of touch on finally, as we wrap up for the end of the day, I want to talk on maybe the single biggest scary problem that if it's not solved, along with the FBI being the kinetic mechanism that our government will use to come after us. The other thing is how do you fix the long-term crisis of our voting system and the republic being undermined? And Trump has made a statement about it. I'm not nearly as optimistic as some people are, but at least he's acknowledging the problem. And I think that is certainly a step in the right direction. So we're going to do all those things. Before we do, we're going to remind you that there are infinite numbers of people, I don't know how many people, but a lot of people that are out there that would love to steal your data. We're talking about cyber criminals and hackers. We're talking about foreign entities. We're talking about people that are living in Nigeria, sitting in a call bank, trying to call you up, pretend to be a company that you work with. How do they do that? Well, they have access to all of your data. So once they do, they know who you are and where you live and how old you are and what jobs you've had and all this kind of stuff. And one of the easiest things you can do to take your name out of the pile that these scammers can come after you with is by signing up for a service like Patriot Protect. That's what my wife and I use. It's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Let me just tell you guys right up front, it's a little bit awkward because you're going to be filling in a lot of information about yourself. They have to know that you're the person that they're trying to get removed from these data broker websites. And then they go out there and scrub the web trying to pull this information out. And it's constantly popping up. So you want this to be a subscription service that you do. You can do it one time per year, an annual service. You just pay for it. It's a couple bucks per month across the whole year. It's like $6 a month a year or something like that. And you use my name, Kyle, KYLE, for a 15% discount at checkout. They're scanning the dark web as well, using their blackout service, looking to see if somebody has already hacked your data and already sold it out there, in which case you can change your logins, your passwords, you can change the information out there, you can notify your banks that you might be a victim of a future scam, you can save your money. And so this is an ounce of prevention versus the pound of cure. The pound of cure usually ends up in the thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Don't be a victim. Put on some digital camouflage. If you're not using Patriot Protect, use a service, but that's the one that we use here. We appreciate them being a sponsor of the Kyle Seraphin Show. And the link is in the show description right up front. Very easy to find. Let's get into today's program and let's go after some big nuggets. So yesterday, I got to see one of my best buddies in the world, who I don't see as often anymore. He is now living in Tennessee. And he is facing the possibility, maybe the probability, of a 73-year-old boomer stepping into the governor's seat on the next go-round. As we talked about yesterday, just not a fan of ladies in their 70s running for governor anywhere. I don't care who you are. I don't care how awesome you are. I don't care how good you look for your age. All that is kind of gross. But we went down and hung out, and I hadn't seen him in about 9 months. And so some things had changed around our house. Two of the most interesting things, I guess, that were, because he's a truck guy and drives a diesel truck and had an RV that they pulled out to Tennessee and kind of found a place to live, which was cool. I also have a diesel truck, and it's kind of a nice little bookend. In 2000, I'm trying to remember exactly. I think in 2009, I bought my first diesel truck. It was a 1991 F-250 single cab, no air conditioning, roll down windows, stripped down model, double battery, double gas tank, long bed, 8-footer, rear wheel drive. And it was awesome. And it cost me $1,700. I've been kind of a frugal guy most of my life. And so I had this diesel truck. This was the 7.3 liter IDI international diesel engine. It was epic. And I actually loaded my spare tire up on front of this ranch hand grill that was on it. So it looked like a pig nose. And I actually pushed guys onto base every once in a while when the young guys who had a lot more money invested in their car had no gas and they couldn't get themselves in. I would just put that rubber right up to the edge of whatever they had, and I would just slowly chug them onto Kirtland Air Force Base, which was always kind of funny. Now I've got a new diesel. It's a 6.7 liter, and it's very nice and it's very plush. And my buddy and I were talking about it. And as we were talking about it, I started realizing we're looking at all the different features. And, now you have to do a thing called adding DEF, DEF, that's diesel exhaust fluid. And interestingly enough, that may be going the way of the past. There's a clip that I lost, but it was a discussion by Lee Zeldin, who's the EPA administrator in the Trump administration, talking about how they were going to deregulate. And basically, they weren't going to roll back regulations to 2008. They were going to delete the EPA from getting involved in a lot of this stuff. And so who would cover this and the possible climate change disaster that it might cause except NPR? So that's where we're going to lead off today. And what did they said? Their headline, which drew me in, was "Businesses face quote unquote chaos as the EPA aims to repeal its authority over climate pollution." Now, I'm a business. I mean, I run a business. It's a me business. Here I am. But my business also has this little diesel truck that sits outside. It's not that little, actually. It's pretty nice. And so I started reading this. And you'll be shocked to find that they were able to determine that there are many businesses who have joined some sort of professional business association that are absolutely incensed by Lee Zeldin doing this totally normal thing, which would say, the government doesn't really belong in your business. It doesn't actually need to tell you how to drive. It doesn't need to call your stock pond in the back of your property navigable waterways. And that is totally unacceptable to CNN. And so let's listen to him discuss what's going on. I'm going to read through some of these articles. Mostly what I'm interested in is they found people that theoretically are in quote unquote business that are begging for more regulation. Why would that be unless it benefits the business? Or it just benefits their climate scam.
The Supreme Court made it very clear that I have to follow the law. I have to follow the plain language of the law, and I can't get creative. So when you read through the 2009 endangerment finding, they say that where there's silence in the law, there's gaps, that I should just be interpreting that as my own discretion. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that that is not what is a power that I have. This decision is a decision for Congress to make. If they want to amend Section 202 of the Clean Air Act,
with all due respect,
say, hey,
a power
EPA,
that you have is to rewrite a regulation. You are taking an action. You could just leave it alone.
The power comes from the law. I don't get to just make up the law just because a predecessor decided to fill in vague language in the law to do many mental leaps to try to justify an electric vehicle mandate and trillions of dollars of regulation to strangulate out of existence entire sectors of our energy economy. You were posting earlier a whole bunch of photos of stationary sources. Well, the Biden administration did do a whole bunch of regulations to try to make, for example, the coal industry get regulated out of existence. There are people out there who like wind. I come from a state where the governor says that New York is a substitute for baseload power. It's not. In order to make America the AI capital of the world, in order to unleash energy dominance, to protect the jobs, to bring down energy costs, we are not going to regulate out of existence entire sectors of our economy, and we are not going to interpret law in whichever vague, creative way allows us to give ourselves maximum power. The power comes from the law and from Congress, not from our own creativity.
Well, that seems pretty logical that the EPA shouldn't be making their own laws, and yet they did. And so I will link over on kyleserafin.com if you guys want to be able to read it. The 2009, I'll read you the name of the study, which came from the EPA. The endangerment and cause or contribute findings for greenhouse gases under Section 202 Alpha of the Clean Air Act is dated December 7th of 2009. So it's super important in the first year of the Obama administration. This was part of the Climate Change Division Office of Atmospheric Programs, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C. You guys can look at that study if you guys are so curious into it. But essentially, what they did is the thing that the government often does. It justified its existence and its ability to step into the wading pool and regulate something that is not explicitly called out in the law itself, in the Clean Air Act. In the same way that when they were talking about waterways and the reason that they're able to go after all of your standing bodies of water on your own property and why the EPA believes that they have administrative capabilities there is simply because they said they did. Because they were like, well, we define what a navigable waterway is. We put it out for public comment and nobody knew about it. And so now we've defined it. And now that is something that has force of law. This is the enemy, I think, of a free society. This is the enemy. This is what the quote unquote deep state, this is what your bureaucratic entities do, folks. The Administrative Procedures Act, 1946, it goes back to that, where Congress said we could be really granular and specific about what we do. We could outline very clearly what we mean by everything. And they actually try to do that in general. If you've ever read a law, there's always hyperlinks within them because it defines something, with another statute, or there's another little subsection that tells you what the actual federal definition is. And when it's insufficient or there's vagaries in there, it leaves all this sort of play. And after 1946, what they said is the executive agencies get to go out and do it. So this is the real this is the ongoing crisis that exists with our government, is that it wants to insert itself in. Nobody's ever gotten a promotion in government for making their governmental agency smaller. Lee Zeldin is one of the few people right now who's divesting from powers. You're not seeing it over at DOJ, which I wish you would, saying, hey, we don't belong in the intel business. There's already agencies that do that. There's like 17 of them. We could have 16. We could have 12. We could have 3 of them, and that'd be fine. They don't do that. Nobody ever gets promoted or gets praised in government for shrinking the size of government. Now, the upside is about what? Last year, I think? It was either last year or the year before. We had this Chevron deference removed. The Supreme Court went out there and said, we used to say that tie goes to the government, that the default position is the government is the expert. And so they are going to be correct. And when they come up against some private citizen, they win. Unless the private citizen can overwhelmingly prove that they are correct in the face of this expert who we take at face value until you prove otherwise. They've actually removed that. So Chevron was a big rollback, and that was a 1984 court decision. So for the last, 30-something years? Is it 30 or is it 40 years? 40 years? We've been dealing with this sort of tyrannical administrative state where the EPA can define something, say it, and then they just do it, and there's no fight back. And so finally, you're seeing a little bit of a rollback on this, and it's kind of interesting. As you guys pointed out in the chat, yes, I live in Texas. Yes, I can do a def delete for my diesel. Interestingly enough, the picture that you're actually seeing on the screen, and I don't know why they chose this, but this is NPR's picture for this particular story. It's just a big rig exhaust pipe sticking up into a cloud. Like, there's really nothing to it. But it was pictured in Austin, Texas, so just down the street from me, which is kind of funny. I'm going to read you some of the story. I'm going to read you some of the quotations I believe are relevant from these folks. This might be one of the bigger wins that you can have. And again, it's not going to get a ton of play, and I want to give fair coverage where I can. There's something else to add into it too, which is that personal sense of liberty that you can make your own decisions, right? That is something that you would think that liberals would sign on to. Remember, they're not liberal anymore. That's why we use the term leftist here. Liberals, in theory, would say sort of like live and let live. And, what you're doing doesn't necessarily affect me. So if you want to smoke weed in your house and listen to jazz, as long as it doesn't sneak in through the barrier of my home and I don't have to listen to it, then I don't really care what you're doing. That's more libertarian. Those are probably the real liberals at this point, are libertarians. We only have leftists on the other side. They want to control you and they want to give you their values, their morality, and then they want to do it through litigious nature and force you to follow it, which is why, I'm sure they're appalled at the idea of death delete. The article that the clip that I heard Lee Zeldin give on a different interview was essentially that he wasn't rolling it back because, they didn't have any authority to have it, although they don't, which is what he just said on CNN. They don't have the authority to enforce any of this stuff. He also said that the study is basically that it's junk and it doesn't work. And on all these things have been a lie, that they've been trying to do climate change mitigation. So that's interesting. That very much upsets this NPR group. The Trump administration plans to undo landmark findings that climate pollution threatens public health and welfare, and it poses significant risk for corporate America. Suddenly, NPR, this is an NPR article, really, really cares how businesses are going to do. Sure they do. The Environmental Protection Agency had an endangerment finding. Again, I'll link that over on the local site for you guys that want to read it. For those of you that are nerdy enough to go through and read a government finding. It served as the legal basis for federal climate regulations under the Clean Air Act since 2009. Again, a radical transformation from any previous thing and not explicitly laid out in the law. The finding concludes that the accumulation of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide in the atmosphere endangers people's health and the well-beings of communities. Remember, without carbon dioxide, we all die. That's it. Everything dies. All plant life ends. But it's a pollutant, not defined by statute, defined by feelings from this endangerment finding. It goes on, reaching that determination was a prerequisite set, so they could have now limits on pollution, including sort of the carbon footprint. All of that stuff flows out of these findings. Getting rid of this authority would lead to the repeal of all greenhouse gas standards at the federal level, according to the EPA, amounting to, it says, one of the largest deregulatory actions in American history. Here's the fun part. Companies have long complained that the government's effort to rein in heat-trapping pollution are impractical, because they are. But a lot of businesses want the EPA to be in charge of setting national standards of some kind, according to proponents and legal experts. And so who did they found? They found a lady. It's a lady. Her name is Lisa Jacobson, and she is the president of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, whose members include major electricity producers and a trade group for the natural gas industry. No names given, no specifics cited. Not likely to be major players in that space, because you can imagine people who try to pump gas or pull crude oil out of the ground or do industrial processes are not begging for the government to come in and tighten down on them. Unless you believe that Lisa Jacobson is, in fact, an accurate representation of businesses in America, which I don't. She said, quote, I look at what the administration wants to accomplish with regards to our national security and winning the AI race. They have nothing to do with this. We want to have expansive energy production. We have that opportunity, and we can do that affordably. And we can do that while we're managing air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. What does that mean? Nothing. It sounds good, though. I mean, that sounds like a person that really cares and knows things, doesn't it? Don't you feel like Lisa Jacobson is really interested in the climate and the planet and growing energy and AI or something? I don't know. She said, I would like to focus more on that than on changes to these regulatory policies, which will cause disruptions in planning and moving forward with projects that we need today. Then they found an environmental lawyer who was able to speak about it, and he had some negative thoughts. And then they went to the American Petroleum Institute. The API is a legitimate oil and gas trade group, so we can hear them. They said that it continues to support a federal role in regulating greenhouse gas emissions. Unclear when they said that, or why they said that, or what the context was, or more importantly, what was the question that led to that answer? If you guys don't know, whenever you start doing these media interviews, I always record them now because I want to know that my comment is taken in context. And the last time that I was cited in a newspaper article, just for whatever, just your awareness, I did about a 28-minute interview of which I spoke for about 24 minutes of that interview. Maybe slightly more. That's a good interview, by the way. That you ask a question and you let the person just talk. they resulted, the resulting sort of product that came out of that quoted one sentence that I said over almost 30 minutes. So you don't always know if the context is true or fair or accurate. So again, we kind of do this caveat emptor. I'll end with this thought from NPR's coverage. All the way at the bottom, it says the Trump administration said this spring that it was reconsidering the endangerment finding as a result of a sweeping initiative to roll back environmental regulations. At the time, Lee Zeldin said the goal was to, quote, drive a dagger straight into the heart of the climate change religion, end quote. I very much like the idea of ending the climate change religion, and putting a dagger in the heart is as good as any analogy. It is climate paganism. It is one of the sacraments, if you will, of the broader religion of leftism. This secular idea that all good things come from the government, and they sort of like also deify this Gaia earth figure. And all that's kind of gross. And all of it is not Christian. And all of it isn't really compatible with the majority of what Americans think. But if you go to the hard left, that's where it sits. Government gives us all the good things. It tells us what's good and bad. It defines what's a sin and what is not a sin. If it's legal and we think it's bad, then we make it illegal so that we can actually have sort of our morality codified for us. And Zeldin's talking about solving this problem. Some of the most mundane and dull things, like nobody's really excited about EPA policy, if I'm being honest. It's not sexy or fun, but it is the thing that is going to come in and disrupt your existence. It's going to disrupt your business. It's going to be the person that comes in and does an environmental study and says that you can't build on your own property. You know, EPA regulations outside of the actual law, which is what he's saying. If it's not set in law, we're not going to do it. And remember, the CNN lady asked, well, why don't you just leave it alone? Because it's already there. That's going to be a broader problem, because they would love that. They're like, look, I know Joe Biden brought a bunch of people into this country illegally, but why don't you just leave them alone? They're already here. I mean, why would you try to fix the damage? Why wouldn't you just allow it to continue? That does seem to be kind of a leftist argument, like leave us alone, but they're always doing what? Progressing. There's a reason why the term progressive is more accurate than liberal at this point, because progressives are stepping forward and pushing their agenda. Even when their agenda disagrees with another part of their agenda, they'll still march it forward illogically, because progress is the key. Progress. Put it in air quotes here. All right, here's Lee Zeldin talking about greenhouse gases. This is from the Ruthless podcast. This looks like it would be a pretty good listen as well. I may put this on my list.
If you were asked congressional Democrats to describe what it is, the left would say that it means that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is an endangerment to human health. Mm-hmm. They might say methane is a pollutant. Methane is an endangerment to human health. And that's an oversimplified, I would say, inaccurate way to describe it. What's the significance? How big is the endangerment finding? Well, repealing it will be the largest deregulatory action in the history of America.
Yeah. Right? So I don't know why they threw the music, the hip hop on the end of it, but that's worth knowing, that you're doing massive deregulation by getting rid of a government finding that is not law, but has force of law. So all of this stuff stems out of some good moves that happened from the Supreme Court. And yeah, let's give credit where it's due. If you'd had a Hillary Clinton in office starting in 2017, we wouldn't have the people that are in the Supreme Court. For better or for worse, they are imperfect, but I can pretty much guess that a Hillary Clinton Supreme Court would have been atrocious, horrific, and disgusting. So the Supreme Court doesn't always go the way that we would hope, but getting rid of the Chevron deference was a really big deal. And seeing some of the fruits of that did take a long time, especially with repealing some sort of like goofy regulatory thing. All right. I also want to tell you guys real quickly before we move forward, speaking of methane production and CO2 production, what do they really hate so much? They hate cows for some reason. If they hated cows as much as they say they did, maybe they would eat cows, right? I don't know. That's a weird segue. MadHatJerky.com/KYLE is the jerky choice of the Seraphin household. If you guys are interested in getting a really high quality snack, you want to buy something that you're going to feel good about eating, you can get USDA prime beef there. It's keto friendly, many of them carnivore friendly, depending on how aggressive you are on the carnivore thing. You can get it with just minimal stuff on there. Carbohydrates to a minimum, maximizing your protein, give things to your kids, give things to your grandkids, get rid of cow farts and methane, which is so dangerous, by eating the cows. Maybe that just encourages them to grow more cows. It's Matt with 2 T's, hat with 1 T, jerky.com, matthatjerky.com/KYLE. You're supporting an American business. Young guy, he's under 20 and he's employing people in America. He's making money and he's making a product that you trade your dollars for, and then you get something that you can enjoy. It's healthy. It's enjoyable. It has a very nice texture to it. It's not like eating boot leather, which I'm not a huge fan of. It's like a tender product that you get in there. It doesn't last forever, but it does last you for a while. So put it on your desk, and whenever you're thinking like, hey man, I really need a snack. I could go eat some chips, some crackers, some garbage, like whatever, something to give me a little pick-me-up. No, get yourself some Mad Hat Jerky. Get yourself some beef and just eat meat. You talk, my friend Tracy Beans also follows this. She has this attitude. Meat heals. Turns out, some of you guys know, actually my attorney who represented me with the O'Keefe deposition is a big meat guy. Dropped like 50% of his body weight because he was a chunky guy and now he's super lean. He looks way healthier. So some of you guys know. Getting some of this garbage out of your diet will help. All right. I want to continue on with things. What if you just left everybody alone? Could you just do that? That's what Democrats apparently want. Leave them alone. Don't bother these poor people. They're just trying to get by with their crappy lives. Let's read this story real quickly here. This apparently caused some outrage. The DC delivery driver detention. That's a really good little alliterative phrase there, isn't it? DC delivery driver detention sparks concern and fear among some in community. Well, that's saying an awful lot without saying much. A series of videos showed federal agents conducting operations in Washington, D.C. It sparked an immigrant concern. The Trump administration continues its federal takeover. We can do two things at once if we're being logical and reasonable stuff. We can look forward and say that a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. is not ideal because the federal takeover of anything is not ideal. EPA is your good example. They got in and they wanted to make everything safe in the air, and they ended up regulating like a natural byproduct that each of you breathe out every time you do something, right? CO2 is a process. It is part of normal human respiration. It's also the thing that your plants and your food has to have in order to go and conduct photosynthesis. So it's just part of the cycle. And more in the air means warmer. Far more people die from cold than hot. We've done this before, right? We've played this game. Okay, so government getting involved almost always is wrong. Nobody planned on having people living in Washington, D.C. the way that they do. And nobody planned on having the people who live in Washington, D.C. live in the way that they do. A lot of that territory was ceded from Maryland. That's fine. It's a federal district. There's obviously a place for a federal district. It should actually include the federal buildings and the federal spaces like the National Mall and some of the museums and some of the different sort of like federal buildings that allow you to come in and work there. But the rest of Washington, D.C., this is Kyle Serafin's opinion. I'm just sharing it with you. I think it's reasonable. Having worked there for 5 years, those people should be able to be represented in Congress. They always complain about that. Have you ever seen? It's actually their license plates. It says taxation without representation. They're bitching about a thing that they voluntarily got involved in. I got a reporter who works for NBC that I talk to sometimes, and he was like, Washington, D.C. is like totally safe. And I'm like, bro, I can take you to a place where they would kill you. You specifically. Like a white, soft male, they would eat your soul. I used to work in those neighborhoods every single morning. It was a regular thing. You can smell when you're going into those neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. Take it from me. You don't have to. It smells like desperation and diarrhea in the river. When you drive over the Anacostia, you're like, ugh. I used to get on the radio sometimes and I would say like, I love the smell of DC in the morning, and I just give the guys a hard time because it'd be 5 a.m. and we're going to go sit and watch drug dealers and open air drug markets and women who are abusing their children because they're child pornographers. Yeah, women doing that kind of stuff. It's awful. And then they put up this victimized thing. Oh, we shouldn't have taxation without representation. You chose to live there. You moved to a place that doesn't have a congressional representative. I don't think that place should exist. I think it should flow back to Maryland, which is what it ought to be anyway. Maryland kind of sucks anyway. I'm not a huge fan of Maryland, but most of DC blends right into Maryland. And when you go over the state line, you're like, you don't know because it looks the same demographic of people, the same sort of like building style. There's no change. There's no cultural difference between most of Washington, D.C. and then what happens in the nice Maryland and the crappy Maryland. They both flow directly into Washington, D.C. So give it to them. Super easy. We can agree that the answer is that the solution is bad. I don't think federalizing Washington, D.C. is good. But we would agree for very different reasons. I think just let the crappy area be part of a crappy state. The libs, the leftists, are upset because you're really hurting the feelings of these poor immigrants that are just trying to make a living illegally in this country in felony violation of Title VIII. And so is the company that's employing them. Washington, D.C. resident Tyler DeSue, he woke up tired and craving a breakfast on Saturday morning. So he did what many people in his situation would do. First of all, if your choice, because you woke up on Saturday and you were tired and you were craving breakfast, was not to make effing breakfast, that's why I don't want to hear people complain about their finances. So many people make awful. I've never once, 0 times has Kyle Seraphin or Kyle Seraphin family, and I'm guessing my parents have probably never done it either, have never once used Uber Eats. Ever. I can't fathom the idea of some unknown stranger or illegal alien driving around with my food and bringing it to me when I sure as hell can go do it myself. We used to have delivery services, right? Like pizza delivery. And then there were businesses that were takeout only. If you want the takeout, you got to unseat your happy ass and go get it. The fact that you're willing to pay more, like, I remember one of the guys at InfoWars was telling me they spent $50 on like a burrito, queso, and like 2 other little things plus tip, right? They paid 2-3 times what it cost to have some random scumbag who might be in this country illegally bringing you your food. What the hell's wrong with you people? Did what many people would do in this situation. It just tells you. This is NBC News writing about it. Someone called Didi Martinez. When the driver took longer than usual, DeSouza checked the app and noticed something seemed wrong. This is a great story. The delivery driver's GPS location had stopped short of his address. He went out to look for him. He went to look for his food that he ordered that didn't show up. I stepped onto the street and I looked down and I see lights in the direction, like police lights in the direction of where my driver was, he said in an interview. It was my driver by himself and like 9 different officers all wearing different uniforms. Most of them had face coverings on. This actually is not ideal. When you deal with federal agents, they don't have uniforms. So they jump out wearing blue jeans and hoodies and t-shirts and freaking wife beaters. And they wear tactical yoga pants if they're chicks that grab their buttocks and whatever. Like all of that, not great. So DeSouza went to go investigate. And the driver, whose name appeared on the food app as CD, S-I-D-I, was being questioned. First about his vehicle registration, then about his immigration status. And then they said, you're going to come with us today in a recorded interview or video that this guy did. Can you tell me in Arabic, please, said CD, the illegal alien who did not belong in our country. And so we have that video. And we have people that are chastising the federal agents for getting this out. Now listen. This is right on the heels of an Indian guy who got an illegal commercial driver's license in California, drove it into Florida, did an illegal U-turn because he doesn't understand American laws and should not be driving a big semi-truck, and decapitated and killed 3 people that are legal residents of my country. So when you bring people into this country that are not supposed to be here, and then they work in violation of Title VII illegally, which is a felony, and the hiring of that person is a felony, we get a real problem. And then you have where leftists actually shine. They're going to apologize because they want their Uber Eats. They just want to be delivered that breakfast burrito or whatever the hell it was, because that's more important, God forbid, than a family that gets T-boned by this a-hole who's driving around in a SUV that he has no business having. And he doesn't speak English and he can't have a communication. They're out there crying, please, use Google Translate. Here's the video of what that looked like.
He doesn't understand what you're saying, bro.
I understand what you're saying.
Just use Google Translate on your phone. It takes 2 seconds.
Okay, turn around.
This is some bullshit.
Put your hands behind your back, okay?
This is ridiculous.
You're going to have access.
Better things to do than harass Uber Eats drivers. Minding his business, trying to make a living.
He's just minding his business illegally in our country, not speaking English,
You don't have
and
to say
driving on our
anything,
roads.
sir.
Then she's going to talk to him in English. Listen to those cicadas. Can you hear that?
You can request a lawyer, sir. You don't have to say anything to them.
You can't understand English, sir.
Yeah, they said his tax was invalid, but now they're saying that it was a mistake. Now they're taking him.
Right. So what they said is that he was driving illegally with a vehicle that wasn't properly registered, that normal people have to deal with. And he's just trying to make a living, even though he doesn't belong here and he's not from here and he shouldn't be here and he can't speak our language. Imagine honest to God, every time I do this, I'm just like, imagine if I went to Germany and I didn't speak German and then I just started working there And then I got arrested because I was not supposed to be there and I was working illegally and I couldn't understand German. I didn't know what any of the street signs said and none of it made sense to me and I couldn't figure out what the thing even said on the car. And then like, would people come to my aid and be like, leave him alone. He's just trying to work in our country and make money. It's such a suicidal impulse. That suicidal empathy that you're going to feel sorry for this guy who just as easily could have turned around and taken you out. It looks like he might be in this little like stupid moped scooter, so he'd probably only take himself out. But honestly, if he even damaged my diesel truck by driving around like that, I'd be pissed. Like, get the hell off my roads. Get out of my house. What are you doing? All right, speaking of foreigners that I'm not a big fan of, you like that? We'll do this in just 1 second. Let's take a quick few second break for the folks over on Spotify. There's going to be a canned ad here. We appreciate you guys listening through them or skipping them or whatever you do. Here's the break. And there it is. I just want to give the warnings because it allows people not to be caught off guard by that. Let's talk about other foreigners that I'm not a big fan of. This guy might be my least favorite foreigner. He was allowed to come here legally because he had a visa, I'm sure, travel visa. What do we need to know about Monday's Trump-Zelensky meeting at the White House? Well, what we need to know is that CBS covered it, so let's do some takeaways here. Trump hosted both Vladimir Zelensky and European leaders at the White House, an event that was called a very good step, an early step towards possibly resolving the war in Ukraine. I heard a bunch of MAGA Homer cheerleader types yesterday. I jumped into some social media spaces and discussions, and the claim was Trump is so awesome that he's skipping a ceasefire and he's going straight to peace. How amazing. Maybe that's true. Awesome. I just like Trump needs to stop over-promising and under-delivering. That would be great. And the penis-playing president of Ukraine is gross. It's all gross. He shows up and he got praised. You can see him on the screen right now. He's wearing a black dress shirt buttoned all the way up to the top. Then he's wearing a black, weird Eurotrash suit jacket thing that has pockets in the front. Doesn't look like a suit to me. And that's all buttoned all the way up to the top. So he looks like a freaking fool, which means he got praised left and right. The leaders showed unity with Zelensky and European allies. They stressed the need for security guarantees and an eventual peace deal. Why? Why do there need to be security guarantees? What happened to America first? Seriously, I keep fixating on this. Can anyone please tell me, like in a comment below or in a comment on the audio stream, can one of you please tell me what America first meant to you? That I don't get it. I have this picture of what it means, and that's not it. Security guarantees for a country that's not us. What is America first about that? We must have some role in it. So I don't understand it. Will one of you please help me understand? Or maybe you just tell me that, no, we're on the same page here. Please help me understand what America first meant when you voted for it. Listen, I'm all about it. America first is rolling back EPA regulations and telling me that the stupid fluid that I put in that makes my diesel less efficient and has extra weight and takes, injects garbage in. It's one more fail point. What Zeldin was saying on those things, by the way, I'm going to break away for 1 second because I remembered it. Zeldin essentially said that the death fluid insertion and all that, it made vehicles slightly more, less emitting for a little period of time, but it also caused higher turnover and that you had like more vehicles retired. So their net carbon footprint was higher because they didn't last as long. Meanwhile, you can still go find like a 96, 7.3 liter super, what do they call it? The supercharged diesels, whatever they were, the IDI, the International. You can go find those still. You can still find a 91 F250 diesel like I had, that 7.3 liter diesel. They're still out there running. But you go try and find one of those 6 liters, and a bunch of them are all already gone. They've moved on to the new series, and you won't find them. In any case, this is what the mainstream was really excited about. This is an NBC story. Suited and full of praise, Ukraine and allies woo Trump away from Putin. Can we just take a moment about how flipping dishonest that is? And so I'm actually on Trump's side on this one because he had a statement that he doesn't want to talk to our media, and I don't blame him. Suited and full of praise, Ukraine and allies woo Trump away from Putin because Trump was already in the clutches of Putin. Trump, who said, come to Alaska, come hang out on a military base. Let me go fly this like B-2 bomber over the top of your head. Come walk by my F-35s or my F-20, what are they, F-24 Raptors or whatever. Come check out our cool ass planes. Come see like all of our military dominance. Jump in my super cool beast vehicle that we're driving around in, right? That was Trump, who was wooed by Putin, who came to America. But Vladimir Zelensky is wearing a suit, and his penis is not exposed, nor is there a piano in sight, so they were able to woo Trump away. For Europe's leaders, the White House meeting was about optics as much as substance, a chance to undo any ground Vladimir Putin may have gained with Trump in Russia. They had to bring him back from the brink, where he was going to celebrate the story of Vladimir Putin as the good guy. I just agree. I just agree with Trump on this one. This is it. He's just like, yeah, they suck. Our media is dishonest.
That's all we ask for is fairness with the media. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
He's going to have some off-mic talking here in 1 second, so we're going to let the chattering go on. Listen to him.
All the time.
But he loves it. He loves it. For he does it always. I never want to speak with my friends.
He's a very good player, golfer. You know.
Yeah, I know.
He went to college.
But he says you always.
So you got people going, I never want to speak with my press because they're dishonest. These people are dishonest. Yeah, good job. The New York Post got a little like off-camera audio. That's fun. It's true. Suited and full of praise. Let me read you one other great line here. This is the second paragraph. This is the top of the story from NBC News. While the Kremlin publicly smarted, a sense of relief swept through Ukraine and across Europe after the summit Monday with President Donald Trump. Zelensky hailed it as a truly significant step towards ending the war. You can't hate these people nearly enough. Every single time that you think you hate them the right amount, then there's more. There's just more to it. They're gross. That's gross. The Kremlin publicly smarted. Anyway, so at least we can see where their bias is. Again, all of this stuff ends up being like political theater. Remember yesterday we covered this story? Texas Democrats who fled the state who fled the state to block the GOP redistricting. They started coming home. Here's another one of these great stories. This is also actually kind of a local story for us in kind of a weird way. I just want to show you this, like how silly. You have to believe in an alternate reality. Here's the alternate reality. Democratic Texas lawmaker. This comes from CNN, by the way, the most trusted name in news. This comes from CNN. Democratic Texas lawmaker spends the night on the state house floor after refusing GOP demand for law enforcement escort. Texas Democrat Nicole Collier, I think it's Collier, Collier, spending the night on the Texas House floor in protest after refusing a Republican demand to be placed under watch. So she's not going to go out there and have the law enforcement officials and by the way, that's theatrical too. Let's be realistic. She doesn't want to have a law enforcement escort to make sure they don't skip the state again, because they did it once and they broke quorum, which, as far as I can tell, I don't know whether it's a violation of like state law or whether it was just a violation of the conditions of their job. It seems like it's a state law violation. They previously skipped out so they could avoid quorum in the special session, and they faced civil arrest warrants. So it's not a criminal offense; it's a civil arrest. And then they're like, "We're going to do our theater. You guys did theater. You ran to Illinois to go hang out in a gerrymandered state. Now we are going to do theater too, and we're going to make the police watch you when you go home so you don't skip out to Illinois again, now that you're back." And she's the hero. Look at her. Look at her being heroic. She slept on the floor for democracy and for principle because she's so good. I feel bad, honestly, for the law enforcement folks. That's who I feel bad for most. I feel bad for the people that got suckered into being part of that theatrical nonsense. It makes me sad because I don't believe any of this stuff. It's all fake. What was the overlapping graph we used to have? It was the fake and gay. Everything kind of like overlaps that. It's happening at the state level. It happens at the federal level. We see it nonstop. Yeah. Here's the final sort of conclusion on the Zelensky, which, hold on, let me see it again. What was it? Suited and full of praise. How about people who surprise you that are actually doing a pretty decent job? Seems like Marco Rubio does a pretty good job. What I don't like is the 180 turn. He's gone from being Trump is, the devil to Trump is, sycophantic. I'm not real crazy about that. But he is saying honest and real things, which is what you'd expect in sort of a ceasefire and or peace agreement. Both sides are going to have to make concessions. Oh, you mean like there's going to be a compromise? That seems highly reasonable. How dare you say highly reasonable things? Let's do that. Here we go. Marco Rubio sitting on the couch. This couch thing where they bring in all the cabinet secretaries and they all sit there where there's foreign leaders and they do these press gaggles. They're super weird and awkward, but this is the world we live in. Again, that's also theatrical. Here's Marco Rubio saying honest things, and I don't think he's wrong. I wish this fit into what I consider to be America first. It's not bad. It's just not America first, right? You guys are saying it in the chat right now. America first means you take care of our country before anybody else's. Or you could promise ending the Ukraine war on day one.
Just point to one thing. Of all the leaders in the world today, no leader is working harder to prevent wars or end them than President Trump is right now. That's why we're talking to Iran. That's why we're engaged with Ukraine and Russia. It's the desire to prevent these wars from breaking out and to end the ones that exist already. And again, I just think it's tremendous for our country to be led by a president who desires to bring peace and establish peace and protect peace. So it's hard work.
Yeah, generally, yeah. Okay, peace is good. Peace is not the wrong answer for the world. I don't think that's the focus of what America first means, though. I mean, it doesn't mean it to me. Again, maybe that's what it means to you. Maybe America first means peace to all and to all a good night. But it seems like we got some problems. By the way, my palate cleanse today is going to explain everything. If you guys have been worried about money, if you've been worried about finances, if you've been worried about the way the economy runs, if you've been worried about buying a house, if you've been worried about world peace, if you've been worried about emissions or the way that your business is regulated, all of those things are answered in today's palate cleanse. You're going to be shocked, but I found the clip, the answer, all of it. So before we do, let's finish on a sort of the reason why we're able to be critical, and we should be critical of the folks that we elected. I'm one of you. I also voted for this guy. The reason why we can be critical of quote unquote our side is because the other side is in disarray. They're completely nuts, and they're very upset about, like, I don't know, statistics and history and anything honest. Here's Mayor Karen Bass. She's really mad about that that illegal alien got arrested because crimes being investigated are resulting in black and brown people. It always goes down to race. This group is still stuck in that same 2009 findings of climate problems. They can't get past like race, and America is like, okay, look, we gave you guys a reprieve. We went back to the 1970s for a little while. You're batshit crazy. The things you're saying are nuts. They don't resonate with any normal people. So keep running that. You're going to continue only to be in charge in places like California and New York.
I'm very concerned about that. And not only that, I'm concerned about the way he is rolling that out in Washington, D.C., which is essentially going after young black and brown youth in Washington, D.C., imposing a curfew, saying that if they violate the curfew, the parents could be charged $500, saying that the kids could be detained and arrested. We've tried those policies before. They do not work. And it's my understanding that crime was going down in Washington, D.C. So what is the purpose of this?
Yeah, the purpose of it is obviously to just arrest and harass black and brown people. There was this podcast that went out, the Jubilee podcast. I got a couple clips of this lady sitting in my little hopper. This is one that I think is relevant today. Remember, statistics are racist. The fact that black and brown people historically get arrested by doing street crime, particularly in Washington, D.C. How do you know that, Kyle? Oh, I used to work criminal law enforcement in Washington, D.C. The vast majority of the people, if it wasn't a white collar crime, if it was like transactional drugs, if it was involved in human trafficking, if it was involved in theft or violence or robbery, if it was involved in carjackings, if it was involved in going after armored cars or banks or like anything that like would result in sort of human suffering, almost all the pornography, the child pornography, all of the underage girl brothels, like they were all run by black people in DC. That's just like what the population set is that's doing the crime. The white people are working for the government. They're doing legalized crime, probably. And then there's the black people that are doing the illegal crimes. So that's how statistics work. I'm going to play this. We're going to get to the big nugget, I promise you. But there's only probably about 8 or 10 minutes worth of analysis on that tops. So we don't need to sit there and belabor it. I kind of want to look at the bigger picture, and then we'll zoom in. Here's a lady explaining that basically if you understand statistics, if you can do math, then you are a racist. So shame on many of you out there who understand basic like statistics 101 level college statistics or advanced placement high school statistics.
You can give everyone here like a $50,000, especially people that are in the streets who are committing violent crimes consistently, a $50,000 check. It's not going to fix anything. It's not going to increase the median household income in the next 10 years by 10% or 20%. For example, we have the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. We prevented Chinese people from getting citizenship and even entering the country. We discriminated against them and basically put them under apartheid, even here in the United States. Yet they have the highest median household income. How is that possible? How come they don't complain and feel entitled consistently to beg for reparations and beg for this when they are killing each other 90% of the time, which is the rate that black people kill each other, according to the FBI?
Oh, young Matt.
Yet white people are the oppressors.
I'm not sure where your education came from, but they lied to you.
Stats don't lie, though.
Statistics lie all the time. So let's start there, particularly when the statistics are coming from the sources that gain from the statistics being shown a different way. So if you're going to start your argument on stats don't lie, you've already lost the argument. They lie all the time. Yeah. One, comparing Chinese people who are immigrants that made a choice to come to the United States and comparing the continued effort of black people to ground themselves in a nation that continues to make impediments for them to show and live and exist in their true citizenship is a false equivalency.
I don't believe that happens at all. No one here is in.
Are you acting right now? Do you really believe this?
I'm telling the truth. There's no systemic racism that I've experienced here in America. What system is racist? I think the only racism we've actually seen recently, systemic racism that we've seen, is the application of systemic racism against white people. The University of Western Washington, for example, has been trying to segregate dormitories using black-only dormitories because black people feel safer amongst each other, but they're more likely to kill each other than white people are ever to kill them. That's just the truth. You have King Von rapping about killing other black men. Why should I think that the white man is the oppressor when black men are more likely to kill me?
Oh my God, this is scary. You need to think about me as your mama. Do not talk to me in that fashion.
I may go back and finish that because there's a couple more seconds on that. How awful is that? She's like, are you acting right now? While she's wearing a flippin' cartoon jacket and like she looks like an action figure from some sort of like retarded 90s, woke nonsense. What is that? She's doing In Living Color as a human, like she's a one-person human color act. And then you got this kid who's like, oh, I'm just going to share with you facts. Here's a real problem. And so she's like, let me just appeal to authority. Let me assume that you don't know who your mother is, so I'm going to pretend to be that person. It's awful. She's an awful, rotten human being. By the way, she gets owned by everybody. Everybody is smarter than this woman. She says words articulately and knows nothing. Kind of Karen Bass style. That's the stuff that we see. Again, this is why you have a lot of room right now to demand everything of your government. There's no excuse for people that are conservative and for people that are generally speaking right-leaning not to pressure their own group, because all the hits coming from the outside can only lead to better outcomes. Because the left side of the coin is radically disorganized. As we covered yesterday, CNN is out there polling and saying historical lows for Democrat Party, 30% underwater when it comes to polling on their favorability rating. They just don't have a lead candidate. They don't have a leader of the party. They don't know who's who. They're so confused. All right, let me listen to this dipshit for one more. Sorry, I can't help it.
So let's check that now. Okay. So on a basic level, we have to understand that systemic racism is grounded in the realities that black people have not been considered an equal human being in this country since its onset. So there's simply no way to make the argument that there isn't systemic racism. And we have seen in very clear ways the system operate in an organically racist way. Do not cut me off.
All right, I'm cutting her off. So just remember, the systemic reality of the institutional racism has been begun since the onset of this country's founding, which has never once recognized zero facts laid out. No historical ordinances, no references to anything other than her feelings, which are that black people need reparations. That was the argument of that entire program, by the way. So that's why you got lots of room. You got unlimited room to operate. That's why we need to have real discussions from really articulate people that ignore that sort of noise. I just want you to know that it's out there. People are talking about that. That's the churn. That's the laser pointer for the left. They're like, look, we're going to own this kid. He's talking about statistics. He's a black guy. He's an Uncle Tom because he said that black people kill black people. Fact check, true. That's what happens. By the way, white people kill white people. Fact check. That's true too. People who look like you, people who live like you, people who live around you are the most likely to engage in crime against you. The overlap of other racial groups is disproportionate when you talk about black over into white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. but it's still not the majority of crime that any group experiences. They mostly experience crime from their own racial group and or their own socioeconomic group. That's just because that's who we're around. That reminds me of the movie Seven. You remember How Do We Covet? How Do We Begin to Covet? That wasn't Seven, was it? No, that was Hannibal Lecter teaching us from Silence of the Lambs. I actually have that over on the wall. Look, boom, Silence of the Lambs on the wall. How do we begin to covet? It's the things we see every day. And what do you see every day? The people that look like you, that live like you, and so on. All right, let's do a big nugget. Can we do a big nugget? Hold on. Do I have a big nugget?
Morris gave up a big nugget.
There's the big nugget. Big nugget. All right, this just happened yesterday. Let's get some analysis. Because for the first time in American history, we are now experiencing a American state. Missouri's Attorney General is stepping down from a state elected office, the highest law enforcement office in the state of Missouri, to become the co-deputy director of the FBI, the first in the history of the FBI. Never have there been two deputy directors. Why would that be? Why do we need a co-deputy director? Maybe because the current deputy director, Dispatch Dan, what do my buddies called him? Deputy Dispatch. He's struggling, man. He's having a hard time. Do you want evidence? I'll give you evidence.
I gave up everything for this. I mean, you know, my wife is struggling. I'm not a victim. I'm not Jim Comey. It's fine. I did this, and I'm proud I did it. But if you think we're there for tea and crumpets, well, I mean, Cash is there all day. We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. You know, I'm in there at 7:30 in the morning. He uses the gym. I work out in my apartment. But I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., you know, by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated, divorced. And it's hard. I mean, you know, we love each other, and it's hard to be apart.
But you're doing some great work.
But you're really good. We're Fox News, and our job is to fluff it up. Here's the deal. For those of you who actually know about giving up everything for something, can we have a little honest discussion about that and why that little line was so offensive? How about all of you that were in the military? Any of you ever give up everything, like maybe the birth of your first child, because you were serving our government? You were trying to protect American interests, whether or not it was justified. Maybe you have a different thought about what that looked like today, but you showed up in good faith. You were told go over and do something, so you did, and you went somewhere where you didn't get to see your family. You missed a wedding anniversary. You missed a birthday of a spouse. Some of you lost marriages over this stuff. Anybody ever go over there and lose like a body part or a functionality, or maybe you were never the same because of things that you saw that were just atrocious and you couldn't fathom them existing in the America where that lady with the stupid colored jacket lived? Did you ever give up everything? Did you ever give up anything? How about you gave up this thing where you used to make millions of dollars. Now you still make millions of dollars, but it's in your wife's name, and you live in a $20,000 a month apartment with a really nice gym, and you go to work in a job that pays you $250,000 a year that you chose to go into. What about that? Because that's where Deputy Dan's at. All right. Why are we getting a co-deputy director of the FBI? Let me give you it real simply. Some of you do not know this, but Bailey, hold on. I think I've got an article here. Okay. Andrew Bailey was one of the top contenders, maybe the top two contenders between him and Cash in being named FBI director back in December, January, whenever they were making that decision. Now, in no small part due to me and the other FBI guys that are former FBI guys, we ran a very aggressive PR campaign asking for Kash Patel to be put in. Why would you do that? Especially considering my recent criticism. Well, I had the belief that Kash actually understood the problem because he was asking people who did understand the problem what it was. We had a belief that he was going to go in there and make changes, not jump in and get really excited about having a private jet and immediately sell out the principles that we had. I don't think that Dan Bongino sold out anything. I think Dan Bongino got snowed by an organization that professionally snows people, rolls them, bubble wraps them. It doesn't matter what you call it. So what we're seeing right now is a soft landing for Dan Bongino to leave the FBI. As I predicted previously, I told you he'd be out by the end of the year, probably before Christmas. Maybe now, based on what I'm seeing, he might be out in the next 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is that makes people forget about the fact that they have two deputy directors, which has never been done. The fact that we have a deputy director who has a 20-man security detail, despite carrying his own badge and gun, which is silly. They're going to phase him out. So he's going to go back to his old life within the year. Within the end of this year, 2025. So started and finished in this year. But I think the bigger play is We showed you that Kash Patel doesn't know what's going on in his own agency. He just gave out an award to an HRT guy who was credibly accused of shooting in an unauthorized law enforcement fashion, was found with a hung jury that wasn't able to convict him. And they just gave him an award for valor for shooting at a guy in a truck. This is the Bundy, the Wilderness Center takeover situation. Kash has been totally rolled up by HRT. We have credible reports that Kash Patel, the FBI director, is storing his personally owned guns, firearms. I got no problem with having them. He's storing them with HRT in their locker. HRT is the hostage rescue team that's on Quantico, Virginia. They've been taking him out in the helicopter. They've been showing him the selections. They've been taking him out there. He did a hype video trying to recruit these guys, throwing flashbangs and doing cool guy shit. So you've got a guy that basically bought 100% into the image of being the FBI director without actually doing any of the work that we said. And I think one of the final straws had to have been when Donald Trump heard from a member of his administration, through me, that the guy who was running the case, resulting in his wife's underwear drawer getting flipped over and rifled through by federal agents, was now flying the plane of the FBI director, and the FBI director didn't even know it. If you don't know who the people are in your own agency as the director, are you even doing that job? And we know that they don't know what's happening around them because they told us. They went on Fox, and I'm going to show you, this is my evidence, that these guys are getting fed whatever it is that the FBI wants them to know, see, or do. When you watch this clip, I want you to think one question in your head. Who is putting this stuff on your desk, and did you ask for it? Because that's not what I hear.
To that, too, because what the director's saying is right. You got to remember, we come in the morning, there's a portfolio of 100 level 10 items. If it's a level 9, which is a pretty big freaking deal, someone else fixed it. The only thing that gets to my desk or his is a level 10. That's the entire day. Look at his schedule any given day. I'll show you the palm card I have. It is filled from 7:30 to he leaves 7 at night, 6:30 at night. It's filled all day. We just can't focus on one thing. You want New York to go boom? DC to go boom? You want an OC organization to go hack into some cyber network and crack all of Fox News' holdings? We're dealing with all that stuff, too. Everything's a priority. Everything's a priority. This is one of many things we're doing. It's not an excuse. It's just reality.
That's an excuse. That's what that's called. What you're looking at there is someone who believes what the people told him. Did he ask for all those meetings all day long? No. Do we know from folks inside the Bureau that he's miserable doing those meetings and that he doesn't like them? Yeah. He's the number 2 in the FBI. Who called that meeting? Why are you there? Well, you're told because if you don't show up to the meeting and listen, then something's going to go boom. But do you think that the deputy director of the FBI, which is a managerial position, has anything to do with whether or not a case agent is doing their job in the field 13 levels below in the bureaucratic system? No, they don't. So all they're doing is they're keeping you run around and chasing it. And they've been doing it to Dan very effectively. Dan and Andrew Bailey will have the same problem. Neither one of them are Bureau insiders, but here's what I think the play is. So I'm going to share this real quickly. Dan needs a soft out. He's going to, quote unquote, cross train in the Army. And my buddy was saying they call it side saddling. There's a lot of different names for it. Training your replacement, right? You bring somebody in, you get them up to speed with what you're doing. I hope that Bailey is able to immediately hire real Steve Friend. We won't have him on Friendly Fridays anymore. That would be fine with me. He needs Steve as a special governmental employee to come in and be a bullshit filter for him, because all of this stuff, level 10s all over your desk, New York's going to go boom if a deputy director doesn't sit there. Fail. That's a failure. Put Dan back where he belongs. Dan's not capable of doing that job. Neither is Andrew Bailey, by the way. He doesn't know the FBI from the inside. It takes a lot of work to do that. It takes decades. I don't have that experience. I spent 6 years in the FBI and 5 of them in Washington, D.C. I'm not the guy for that job. Dan is definitely not the guy for that job. Talking about it in front of a microphone is not the same as being able to go in and know what the nuts and bolts are of the organization. So let's be very fair about that. I think he's miserable. I hope he goes back to his wife. I hope he gets laid. I hope that his life is better. I hope that he goes back to partying and coming in on his podcast on Mondays and telling you how he got drunk over the weekend. That'd be great. Dan needs to leave. For Dan, but also for America. Andrew Bailey needs to learn a little bit about the FBI, the culture, see what the rot is, and then Kash Patel needs to go. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Now, I can't give you 100%, but I would say that I am moderately confident that Kash Patel's days are numbered because he screwed up. And he screwed up in a big way. And we're not done exposing the screw-ups. He doesn't know who it is that works inside the FBI. He doesn't know who's there. And I'm constantly going to embarrass these people by pointing out who it is. There's a reason why I'm being told that they listen to this show to find out who the problems are so they can try to go fix it before it gets too big on the national news. And our national news is just Twitter. It's not even that much. It's like 3 million people saw a story. Boom. The person that needs to come in is a retired, someone who is not a conservative, not a leftist, but a constitutionalist who understands what the FBI is, why it's wrong right now, and how to do it right. I made a recommendation of that guy. You guys can go watch a couple interviews with him. I brought him on the podcast. His name's Kurt Suzdak. Is he the best option? Maybe not. He is an option. He understands the problem, and he also understands that the FBI is malleable, and you can make it suck or you can make it great, and the FBI is constantly screwing up and constantly able to come back to center and not suck for a little while. They need to take their lumps. They need to correct the problems. They need to get out of the intel business. They need to get rid of these bad actors, many of whom are still there. You need to get rid of the special assistants and the people that were doing Chris Wray's biddings that were stashed all around the FBI. You need to make sure they all go away. And it would help if you had somebody who was a prior whistleblower who prior said no and went up against head-to-head with the FBI and actually know how to beat them in court. Someone who knows how DOJ works. Kurt's a lawyer. He's a retired agent, so he doesn't have any skin in the game. He will make no friends doing that job. He will piss off people on both sides of the aisle doing the right thing. That's the way you should do it. That's what they should have done in the first place. And by the way, Kurt Suzdak was in Washington, D.C. when Donald Trump was inaugurated because Kash Patel asked him to go be down there. He was waiting on standby, and then he got ghosted. And then he drove up and froze his ass off because his old Jeep didn't work. And he told me he went back up to Connecticut, and he's just sitting around. And now he's just watching this chaos play out. We're watching chaos because these guys chose to engage in hubris. Bongino said yes when he should have said no. If they had asked Dan Bongino to step into the Secret Service, it probably would have been too big a job. But that would have been fine. He could have at least gone to an agency that he knows the language, the culture, the way that it works, the org chart, the structure, the types of lies that people sell. He's still got people that would be friendly to him in that agency. The FBI is dead set and was dead set against going after this guy. They were never going to let him be successful. And that's why he's got 100 level 10 things on his desk. And God forbid he say no. Dan just hasn't been there long enough to know that they do that to you for years. They push the red button, they act like it's all over, and if something that you do is not what they want, then you're going to be the one responsible for the next 9/11. That's just how it works. And someday he'll realize that that wasn't the case. And my hope is that Andrew Bailey goes in there and realizes that and then edges out the current director, and then they bring in a real deputy, someone from the Bureau who wants to see it reformed, who wants to see it work properly. If we can't get rid of it, and we can't, then that's the only answer that's going to make any sense. That's the big nugget for you guys. What does it look like?
Gave up a big nugget.
That's the big nugget. I got to turn the volume up on that, I think. In any case, it's sad because what you saw was a guy who basically gave into his pride. I'm sure he's absolutely miserable and he doesn't know how to do the thing he's doing. And he was too proud to say, I can't be that guy. I don't know who asked Dan to do this. By the way, that seems to be the general consensus inside the administration. Like, no one knows how Dan Bongino got that job, why you would choose a former Secret Service guy who's been out of government for 13 or 14 years to step into a government agency he's never worked in, let alone run. That's a terrible decision. Everything about it is bad. But that's the one thing that we can all kind of agree on with Trump's issue. He oftentimes chooses people poorly. He does personnel problems that nobody seems to understand from the outside, and it looks so obvious for those of us looking in. Remember, it was his Achilles heel in 1.0. It was the thing that probably brought him down in the 1.0. He had Sessions. You had Bill Barr. You had Comey there in the first place. You got rid of him and you ended up with Wray. You're not hearing anybody cry about arresting Wray, are you? Why? He's the most recent guy. He's the one that's inside the statute of limitations. He's the one that prolonged the theoretical conspiracy that we hear people talking about. Remember the thing that shocked Dan Bongino to his core? What was that? What was that nonsense? Because I never heard about it again. Remember the wave of transparency we were going to get of what happened on January 6th? Where the hell's that? Where's the pipe bomber? None of these guys know how to go out there and make a demand and then make it happen and let them know either you do the job or you're going to be removed for insubordination. That needed to happen right away. But they came in and touched it soft, and now they're getting handled. This is the same problem that law enforcement officers will face. Anybody who's been in law enforcement knows what I'm talking about. You touch a subject soft, you give them like an idea that they are going to be victorious in a conflict with you. Physical or intellectual, doesn't really matter. You show that you don't have the tenacity to do what needs to be done, and then they run that interaction from then on out. And that's how you end up telling someone, put the gun down, 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 put it down, man, put the gun down. And then you get stabbed because you didn't come in there hard and just be like, if you don't put the gun down, I'm going to kill you. Okay, you've asked him. Then you tell him, gun down. The third thing is you make him. You make him put the gun down by shooting him because that's what has to happen. Whatever. And it shouldn't be a gun, by the way. It should be a knife, whatever. The long and short is, if you don't touch something right away with a firm grip and let them know that you are now taking the reins, you've all done this with a dog probably. Go to a dog and be gentle with it and then try to like take control. You ever see women do that in the park? It's really embarrassing. You don't control. The dog is wagging you. It runs you because it assessed you as weak. The FBI assessed both of these men as weak. One of them was easily played. Here's a jet. Here's a slushy machine. Take your bottles of booze. Fly out to Las Vegas. Sleep in. Party. Have a great time. We're happy to be here. We're here for you. Put your guns in our locker. Come and hang out with us. Here's a badge. Here's a freaking gun. Here's some cool guy shirts. Here's like some freaking some operator clothes. You're one of us. Like you're in, man. Cash always wanted to be one of the cool kids. Dan wanted to do a good job, I bet, but he just doesn't know how to do it. It's not his fault. He's not. He's just not qualified for that job. Neither am I. Neither are you, by the way, people who are listening to this for the most part. If you think you're the right deputy because you have the years of experience and the time in there in the FBI, if you were like a GS-14, maybe a GS-15, and you got run out of that agency for doing the right thing, somebody asked you to do something illegal, immoral, or unethical, and you said no, and that was the end of your career, like you're the right guy, maybe. Okay, let me know. If somebody else wants to take that job, I'll float that name up there to somebody. I don't know if they're listening, but hopefully we see Andrew Bailey step in. So that's the next 6 months, I think. And I don't know how fast it goes, but we'll see it happen soon. All right. I told you I would play you everything and I would explain all the things and all the problems, and I will do that for you very shortly. Can I tell you guys that we have a P.O. box? Some of you guys, I don't know, I have a clock on that. We don't need a clock. That's for our call-in show. If you guys ever want to send something to the show, sometimes you guys want to send me like postcards or a letter, or maybe you're afraid of the FBI reading your emails or something, you can send me to the P.O. Box, which is 9073 West State Highway 29, Suite 110, Box 509, Liberty Hill, Texas, 78642. If you didn't see that, go to Spotify, KyleSerafinshow.com. Very easy to do it. Make sure you guys are liking the program. Make sure you're sharing it with your friends, especially that last little analysis if you think that's not common for people to hear. Let's do a breakdown of all the things. All the things broken down and understood. Here it is. South Park gives it to us. This is what you've been missing out on in the economy.
And so why is our economy failing us? Because the government kept interest rates too low for too long. The government took our economy for granted, and now we are all here paying the price. How long will we sit and watch our economy fall as the people...
And so I say to you, do not listen to the Wall Street brokers, for they are the ones who put us in this situation. Fat cats with corporate greed. They are the ones who knowingly drove us down this pathway of doom.
They must have gone somewhere. The answer is obvious, my friends. It is the Jews. Covetous Jews who have taken all our money and hoarded it for themselves. Hidden all the cash in some secret Jew cave that they built, probably back in the early 60s. It is the Jews, my friends.
Casting all different kinds of blame from person to person. But the fault lies in all of you. You who bought that $300,000 house when you only had $20,000 to put down. You who bought that third car even though only 2 people in your home drive. It is time to stop pointing fingers. Finger pointing gets us nowhere. Steve, we have mocked our economy. And now the economy has cast its vengeance upon us all.
He's right. This is the first guy to actually make sense.
Yea, it is an angry and unforgiving economy. To repent, we must stop frivolous spending. Instead of paying for cable, let us watch clouds. Instead of buying clothes, wear but sheets from thine beds. Cut spending to only the bare essentials. Water and bread and margaritas, yea.
Yeah, that's it. You guys heard it. You're down to water and bread and margaritas. You saw Ryan Matta make a little guest appearance there talking about the covetous Jews hiding all the money in the Jew cave. South Park is so good. Everybody's retarded. That's what I took away from that clip. And people are willing to listen to anybody that says things in a clean, clear, articulate voice. Whether or not they make any bit of sense is irrelevant because they sounded so confident, didn't they? Yes, they did. They were saying my opinion in their voice, and that's what I want to hear. That's what we try not to do here. So many of you will hear not your opinion out of not your voice. And if that challenges you, okay, that's what we're here about. Thanks for listening to it. Please share it with a friend if you have not. Find somebody who sort of like generally agrees with you, but doesn't agree on everything. And just be like, hey, you want to be challenged every once in a while instead of just hearing your own thoughts like regurgitated and burped back at you? Yeah, check out the Kyle Seraphin Show. KyleSerafinshow.com will take you right to Spotify. Easy. and fun. Thanks for being with me today. I'm going to send you guys that are listening over on Rumble to the American Radicals podcast. I'll encourage you over on X. Check out @AmRadPod for my friends over there. And this week is just getting started. So let's see what happens on this Weird Wednesday coming up. Have a great Tuesday, whatever's left of it. God bless you. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.